Hello and welcome to this bonus episode of For Every Response, sponsored by MSA Safety. I'm Catherine Levin and I'm the editor of Emergency Services Times. Today we have a very special bonus episode of the pod because we are going stateside. I'm so pleased to reconnect with Chuck Sims, the Commissioner of the Detroit Fire Department, who I met over 10 years ago when I was living in the US. He's working with Haas Alert, a US-based company which is also operating here in the UK, and is introducing Safety Alert into Detroit's brand new fleet of fire engines. Now we have a language issue here. I say fire engine, sometimes fire appliance, but Chuck, along with Cory Hohs, the CEO of Haas Alert, who joined us on the pod, say apparatus. Despite my 3 years in the States, I struggled with US pronunciations, including this one. So as you'll hear, I stick to what I know. Anyway, back to the pod. It's safe to say that Detroit has come a long way in the last decade. I visited in 2014 and found a city that has almost disappeared, with entire suburbs empty as residents left Motor City. Famous for its car production then and now, the demise of factories meant that the houses left behind became targets for antisocial behaviour, including arson. Burnt out houses were a common sight. I toured the city with Chuck and saw this firsthand. His fire department had little investment and fire engines were not replaced, and the money for repairs to fleet and estate were hard to find. So it's all changed in the space of a decade, and as Chuck shares during this conversation, now he's talking about Detroit Fire Department as a national leader of change and transformation of the front line, and that includes investment in technology to improve public safety through a 10-month pilot with Haas Alert. This conversation is about safety on the road. We talk about digital alerts, fleet reliability, and the impact that changes in human behaviour can have on emergency response. And while we do that, we are firmly in the public safety space, the safety of first responders and the safety of those on the roads. Inevitably, we talk about money and how to convince political leaders to invest in technology solutions. Chuck is eloquent about his strong working relationship with the long-serving mayor in his city and his support for improvement. I start off by asking Chuck to tell us about the Detroit Fire Department, then find out from Cory what solutions Haas Alert is bringing to solve the challenges faced by first responders.
First of all, it's great to see you again, Catherine. It's been 11 years, but great to see you again. So the Detroit Fire Department, we just had our 165th birthday. We originated in 1860. We protect about 140 square miles, which accounts for over close to 700,000 residents and visitors. Of course, we have, once we get these large scale events, we have to cover those as well. We had the NFL draft here last year. And we got the 2027 NCAA finals here in Detroit, which is the college basketball finals. And so we're excited about that. We respond to about 150,000 calls annually. That's across fire and EMS. We are a department where we respond to medical and fire calls. Our code 1 medical response time right now is just below 7 minutes and 30 seconds, which is one of the best in the nation. And so those are the things that we're pretty much excited about. And we're excited about this Haas Alert. We believe in infusing technology any place we can in our department. And this Haas Alert is a great way to start things off.
Fantastic. Thank you for that summary. So, Cory, tell us about Haas Alert and the solutions you're bringing to the emergency services. Why are you working with Chuck in Detroit?
Yeah, so great to be here. Thanks for having us. One of the reasons we started the company, I was almost struck and killed by an ambulance in the city of Chicago. And so started looking at how we could get emergency vehicles to communicate with cars that are on the road. So one of the first things that Haas Alert set out to do was to prevent crashes with motorists with first responder vehicles. But after doing ride-alongs with police officers, firefighters, EMS personnel, we realized the big death and injury rate for first responders and the danger that they're actually at while they're responding out on the roadways. And so that was kind of a big eye-opening experience for us, because we thought we were just solving a problem with connected cars and motorists, like it happened to me personally. And then when we first stood out on a highway with a first responder, watching the cars whiz by, it became very apparent to us there was a lot more work, to be done. So we started Haas Alert to help prevent and save the lives of first responders and roadway workers. Our mission is a connected, collision-free world where everyone gets home safely. And, it's really through the years of working with first responders that we realized there is no easy button to this problem. And so when you look at the number of death rates of first responders, 29, I think 30 now with the officer in Florida over the weekend, 30 first responders struck and killed just this year, 10 in the last 2 months. It's a really big issue, a really big problem, and most people don't even know about it. So we thought this is a problem that has to be had. And just like all startups, it started with, a personal experience and sort of a drive to help try to solve this problem. And if you sit down and talk to a first responder, you realize, how dedicated they are to their communities, and it's hard not to want to help.
Yeah, I have to say I'm astonished by that figure, that 30 killed. These are first responders across the US.
And it's typically around 40, 50 per year. Yes. Wow. That's standard. And this is in the towing industry, they actually refer to the months we're in right now as hell months, because this is when we lose a tow truck operator every 5.5 days in this country. So, look, when we're focusing on the work that we've done with Detroit and fire department and police and all the agencies across the country, this problem for those that are just out there trying to protect our communities in every way that they do, most folks don't realize the danger of just, quite frankly, being on the road. Most people think for fire departments, it's running into a burning building. And lo and behold, one of the biggest death and injury risks is actually just driving to the scene and being in an incident.
Yeah. So, Chuck, that means that the investment that you're making in your fleet, $10.7 million, major investment in public safety, is the right thing to do. And yet 10, 11 years ago, when you and I first met, you didn't really have fire engines that could do the kind of thing they're doing today. So what's released the investment? What's changed in those years so that you can be in a position to be able to work with someone like Cory and put that technology in and improve public safety?
Well, I think I have to give a lot of credit to Mayor Mike Duggan as well as City Council. I think because of our financial stability right now and their commitment to public safety, those two things allowed us to move forward with these investments. And so the last investment we had was in 2022. It was roughly about the same amount. And we had one just recently. And so we're hoping that they will continue to approve these investments for the fire department, because not only, that we believe that the Haas Alert will help save lives and injuries, but also working apparatus is also something that we need as well. Because without working apparatus or apparatus that may, not stop as quickly because it's an old vehicle or not turn as sharply, that can also cause accidents and injuries.
Yeah. What's the delivery time right now, Commissioner? If you had to order a new apparatus, what are you guys looking at?
Easily 24 months. So the allotment of apparatus we received about a month ago, we ordered those in November of 2023. So, and that order was actually expedited for us because we ordered so many. So I would say at a minimum, it's probably a 24-month turnaround.
Yeah, Catherine, there's no fire apparatus store. You just go down to the dealer and pick up a new tiller. It doesn't work like that. So yeah, protecting the equipment is hugely important as well.
Yes. Now, I am aware that it does take a while to put a fire engine together. So it's the same in this country. So we have this new world where the mayor has brought in all this investment. We've got this new fleet in Detroit, and we have Haas Alert. So Cory, you went to Detroit Fire Department to suggest that they used Haas Alert to improve safety, and you started the pilot. I wonder if you could just explain to us why approach Detroit in particular, and how something like that conversation starts. Did you just ring up? What happens to something like that?
My team always laughs at me because I love just walking into a fire department or a fleet shop and asking if the chief is available or a commissioner or fleet managers there, and just having a conversation about what we do. If you know first responders, they're incredibly busy. They have a lot of things going on. Trying to set up a 1 hour Zoom call. If I say, hey, Commissioner Sims, I got to do a 1 hour Zoom call with you, and this will take 6 months, and blah, blah, you can imagine the response. So, it is very much ringing up the city, and having a conversation, not with necessarily folks at the city level, but to the person whose problem you're solving. So going to talk directly to the fire department. And, the reason we started talking to Detroit, it's not that among the 20,000 US cities, not every city is important, because every department, every responder faces the same risk, whether you're rural, suburban, or big city. But, it's a large, great American city, birthplace of automotive, has a long history of automotive and automotive safety. We're in Chicago, so, it's a pretty close drive for us. And really, it was looking at some of the collisions that, we would see with Detroit Fire Department and realizing we could do something to help. So this isn't a lot of times you have 20,000 US cities. How are you going to, prioritize? Sometimes it's folks reaching out to us. Sometimes it's us saying, hey, we saw something and we thought that we could help. And also when you look at the Detroit Fire Department, and I'm glad Commissioner Sims brought up city council. When you see things that, like, the department is forward leaning on technology, you see the Detroit Fire Department doing things that other departments aren't doing. You see them embracing innovation, not just at a department level, but also across the city. You see that, of course, there's automotive manufacturers there, and you really need both two sides to play nicely with each other to really solve this problem, because you need first responders that are doing digital alerting, but then you also need automotive manufacturers to say, hey, we're going to prioritize safety of first responders in our vehicles so that we can help reduce these death rates. And so, not only was it the innovation of Detroit, also seeing their city council approving things on the technology side and seeing them lean forward on innovation, but then also, of course, being able to really show to major automotive manufacturers that we can truly make a difference together. And working with a department like Detroit Fire, we're able to get these safety notifications to motorists right there in the heart of their city, where folks have some of their biggest headquarters. So because one of the hardest things is just bringing the attention and education to this problem. Most people have no clue how dangerous it is just driving or being on the side of the road for first responders. So the more we can do, to get first responders to be able to tell their story, not just hearing it from us, but hearing it from the responders, and having that be heard by the people who are in control of what kind of safety messages motorists receive is critical. So for all those reasons,
Okay. All right. So Chuck, that's quite a compelling story, apart from him turning up in your fire stations and asking firefighters about what they want to do. In terms of the problem that Cory is seeking to solve with Haas Alert and with Safety Cloud, where did it sit in your problem stack? The fire department has many problems it wants to solve. Where does that sit in terms of priority, and be able to find that money to do that investment and to put the time and effort also to put into that pilot? So where does that kind of sit within your organization? We have no sense here of what the problems are of the Detroit Fire Department.
Yeah, so of course it's a high priority, and as a Detroit Fire Department, we have a bucket of high priorities, but it falls into that bucket just because it's the safety of our first responders as well as the citizens. And so, as we know nowadays, a lot of people are distracted by their cell phones, loud music, and so this is just another way that they'll get some form of alert that something is approaching, that they should move over to the side. And as if you think about it, it would also prevent some secondary accidents. So those accidents where we may be responding in a fire truck and they can't hear us or see us and we get right up on them, sometimes people would just jerk over to the left or to the right and cause another accident. So it's far more than just stopping that primary accident. It can also help preventing a secondary accident. but it's extremely important. But I just want to add, Cory, he's exactly right. It came to me in one of our weekly meetings where one of my guys came and said, "Hey, I talked to this guy. He wants to install this," and I thought it was just a great idea the second I heard it. But it was just that simple. And I said, "Hey, if they're willing to give us a pilot, let's try it out." Because I'm all for doing whatever it takes to prevent accidents and injuries.
Yeah, a lot of times when we're talking to departments, especially in the early days when we were starting out, as much as I still love spending time in a fleet shop, it's really getting the mindset of we're not here to sell technology. We're here to talk about safety. And I think people get so much tech kind of jammed down the pipeline, and people are just inundated with new tech and the phone ringing off the hook from people trying to sell more technology, which is great. The way our stuff works is using technology, but as a company who identifies a safety company, and it's super important because it's kind of like, it doesn't matter how it works, but this is why we're doing what we're doing. And this is how we can help reduce these collisions, not only for the firefighters and first responders, but also for the apparatus. And, you brought up secondary collisions. There's a stat that every minute a responder is on scene, the chance of when they close a lane, the chance of a secondary collision goes up almost 3%. Every minute, the chance of them getting hit goes up 3%. So you can imagine how many times you've seen a first responder on the road who's closing a lane and are tending to an incident, thinking about every minute their chance of getting hit just keeps going up and up and up and up and up. So it's the secondary collision is also something critical to keep in mind on what's being prevented.
Okay, so you both make a very compelling case for the use of Haas Alert in Detroit Fire Department. So let's talk practicalities. So we've got how many new fire engines? What do you call them? Apparatus. I got the words right. How many? I can't say it. Fire engine. How many new fire engines do you have, Chuck?
So we received 10 fire engines and 13 ambulances.
10. And how many of those were involved in the pilot?
The new ones, none.
So
we had. Yeah. So we had the pilot. That was about a year ago now when we had the 10-month pilot. So when we had that pilot, the fire companies and ambulances that were part of that pilot didn't get into any accidents at all.
And would they have previously? If you look statistically in the previous 5 years or so, how many would you have expected in the same time period?
That's hard to calculate because I would have to take into consideration the entire department. But just the fact that those in the pilot program did not get in an accident, I think it speaks volumes. Actually, it's the same. Our city streets and traffic and the amount of cars we have on the road. It was good to see that we can go 10 months without those vehicles getting into an accident.
Excellent. And in terms of the practicalities, Cory, of putting Haas Alert into the vehicles and connected presumably with your control room so that you can see what's happening at the center, could you just explain to us how that works? You've got a fire engine, you've got the Haas Alert. How do they come together?
Yeah. So the way it works, there's a device. So we have two different solutions. One is with a device and one is something called deviceless. So the first is we have a device, and as soon as the emergency lights go on, that's how we know, and it's called digital alerting. That's how we know the agency wants to alert drivers in the road. So when those lights go on, it sends out a digital alert and says, I need to notify drivers that are within my path of travel. So it's not just a radius. If we were alerting everybody within a zip code or within, a 4 square block, a lot of people would be receiving alerts they don't need to receive. So drivers only get notified if they're in the path of that emergency vehicle. The other way is through something we call deviceless. So that is through our more than 60 integration partners. So one of the challenges is with public safety is there's so many different technologies and so many different choices that first responders get to make and have had to make. So from one city to the next, they can be next door to each other, but using different solutions. So this is where we had a lot of departments saying, hey, I'm already using things like Samsara or Cradle Point or MyoVision or GTT, whatever the case is. Do I need to add another device? So we started to partner with over 60 different technology companies that already come on emergency vehicles, so you don't have to put a device on. So this means if an agency already has some specific technologies deployed on their apparatus, you don't have to use our device. So it makes the setup that much faster. If someone does have to install a device, it can take anywhere from 30 minutes to an hour to install. It's pretty simple, quick and fast and easy. So most of the fleet folks who look at our instruction manual, they throw it in the garbage and just install it themselves. So it's a pretty seamless installation. The other way that folks can get our HA7, which is our device, it comes standard by a lot of the fire truck manufacturers. So manufacturers like Pierce, Rosenbauer, Seagrave, HME, Marion Body, any of those fire truck manufacturers, our safety service comes already pre-installed and already prepaid. So there's no cost to the city. So that's been a really nice way that the fire department manufacturers have embraced. Look, these trucks are very expensive. When folks get struck and killed or injured, which is even a whole nother set of numbers we probably don't have time to get into, we have an opportunity to make this type of technology standard on the apparatus before it leaves our manufacturing floor. And really kudos to those fire truck manufacturers for leading the industry to say, we're going to make this as standard as the seatbelt. If you know fire trucks and you've ever ordered an apparatus, everything is for the most part is custom ordered. Digital alerting just comes standard as the seatbelt. You don't get to pick and choose, different services. Oh, I don't want it. I want it. It comes as a standard. So,
and is that the case for the 10 vehicles that you've got, Chuck, in the new ones? Do they all have it now standard installed in the way that Cory describes?
They were not standard. We had them. Yes, we had them put on aftermarket. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So they all have it now, and then some of the older ones, but not all of them. So is the plan to install it in all of the older fleet as well?
Yes. Yes. So we have each day we run 47 fire companies, 26 ambulances, and then another 12 responding vehicles, SUVs. So we plan to put the Haas Alert in all of those vehicles. And we're probably looking at a 4 to 6 month time to place the Haas Alert in all those vehicles.
Right. And Cory, you mentioned there were two types with the device in and without. Mm-hmm. In terms of thinking about how, so those vehicles have the device, mm-hmm. and then they connect in with whoever's controlling where they go. Because you talked about in the path of the vehicle, which I thought was an interesting phrase. So I wondered what the relationship was between those who are determining where to deploy the vehicles to and how that fits with your system to know what the path of the vehicle is, because they know where it's going.
It actually works completely independent. Right. So it actually has nothing to do with CAD. It has nothing to do with dispatch. Has nothing to do with any of that. That's what's nice. Actually, when we first started the company, we thought all of this was available. So we were going to state agencies and saying, hey, we'd like to get the information of where all your emergency vehicles are going. Right? We don't have that for the whole state. In my mind, not coming from public safety, I just thought every state would have some master database where everything's, funneling up. And then when you look at it and realize, oh, everything's city by city, agency by agency, that's why we don't do that. And we decided to make it completely independent so that an agency that a lot of agencies don't have CADs. A lot of agencies don't have MDTs or mobile data terminals in their trucks. Like not all agencies are built the same. So the reason we have all of these different types of solutions is because, some are going to get a new truck. So, an average age of an apparatus for your average city size in the US is 10 to 15 years. So they're not going to turn over that much. That's why we needed aftermarket. But it operates completely independent. So those emergency lights go on. The device says, I want to alert drivers. So you got sirens going, you got the emergency lights going, and then folks are being digitally alerted in their vehicles. So it's just like an NFPA standard, 1900. You can find digital alert warning service, and that's really just think of it as just a new alerting type. You'll find digital alert warning service, which, there's audible, there's audible, lighting, and digital. And it's just kind of a new standard alert type.
Okay, so that suggests then, Chuck, that your staff, your firefighters, your ambulance staff, wouldn't even need to know anything about Haas Alert. Presumably they do. How have you talked to your staff about it in terms of this thing that's happening that they can't see or do anything about? It's just happening. How's that gone down with the staff?
It has actually gone well. So I think the way they look at it is that it's another layer of protection for them. While they're driving to these scenes, that they are aware that these vehicles are being alerted, and they're going to move over to the right. So I think it's just for them, it's just another layer of protection, just to show that as far as administration, the fire department, the city of Detroit, we care about our first responders, and we're going to do everything we can to make sure that they go home safely every single day.
Have they reported to you in terms of what they've witnessed in terms of behavior change from the public? Because if they are getting the alerts, then they're changing their behavior. Are they aware? Have they reported back to you what a difference that's made to them?
So I haven't received any reports on that. We're still waiting on that data to come in, but we will collect that data and see what type of changes we can recognize. But I'm quite sure it will cause some type of change.
I think it must do. It must do. I just wondered that kind of sort of sense of things seeming different because of the way that they're traveling along, when people are behaving differently than when they did before. They were kind of honk and get out of the way kind of thing. Whereas, Cory, what are you finding from just generally in terms of behavior change?
Yeah, well, two things. I would also you have that was a really good question. How do you brief or train or educate an entire fire department, especially the size of Detroit? So a lot of times it's, yes, the deployment, there's work to do. Yes, there's approaching the agency and everybody, is excited when things start moving forward. But once we're moving forward, there's also all the work then, and even from Haas Alert side of how do we work with the department to make sure folks know what is in the truck? Like, how do they know what's in the apparatus? How does it work? How is this beneficial to them? Because the one thing I don't like is if I stop by a fire department, whenever we're traveling, we have a rule. You have to look up an agency nearby and stop in and say hi. So if you go into a fire department, you knock on the door, they're always inviting. Say, hey, my name's Cory, I'm from Haas Alert. You see that box up there? I always ask, do you know what it does? Every once in a while, I'll get someone who says, I don't know, chief told me not to touch it. So, that's not what we want to hear, right? So, it's always a good faith response. So we always then, make sure there's education and there's training. So we have, trainers, and we always try to follow up with our agencies and say, hey, do you have any questions? There's a monthly report that goes on. We're always trying to talk to them more about safety, and then always trying to make sure we're on site, even if agencies, for Commissioner Sims, if it, like you said, this could take 6 months to roll out. Well, you want to make sure there's the right training in place, the education on the install. Is it, if the department's doing it, then we want to be on site with the agency to make sure we're supporting them, that everything goes well. So there's a lot more involved. That's always, of course, ongoing with the agency to make sure everybody understands what the benefits are, how it works, and how it can help them. On the impact, we just published just not that long ago, it's about a month ago on our site, drivers that were traveling over 35 miles an hour that received our digital alert slowed their speed by over 17%. So when you talk about drivers on the roadway, and for general motorists in the US, we average about 40,000 deaths a year. That number comes down depending on how you splice and dice the years. There's different numbers out there. No matter what it is, it's an unacceptably high number. But speed is what kills. Like that's it. And when you're talking drivers slowing down over 17%, when they're traveling over 35 miles an hour, and of all the solutions and all the safety solutions that are out there, all the technology that's been brought to market, all people are trying to find ways to slow drivers 2 to 5%. So to see the fact that a driver receives an alert in a vehicle and they're going to slow down, move over, and slow their speed by over 17%, that's a major indication. There's also other independent studies that universities like Purdue has done that showed digital alerting reduced queue collision crashes by 80%. If drivers, University of Minnesota had a study, if you alert a driver before they hear or see sirens and flashing lights, the chance of a collision goes down by up to 90%. So there's all these things we know about. If you alert a driver in a car, and at the end of the day, all we're doing is breaking driver distraction. We just want you're driving, you're telling the kids to be quiet in the back seat, you're turning the radio down, you're getting off your phone, of course. You want people focused on the road, of course. Lots of people are distracted driving. When you get that notification in your vehicle that says emergency vehicle approaching or emergency vehicle on scene, all it's meant to do is for you to like re-engage with your surroundings, put your hands at 10 and 2 and focus on the road, see the emergency vehicle, slow down and move over. Like that's the driver behavior change that's being pushed. So a lot of times folks will say, oh, you guys doing this, you know, what are you doing with connected cars and ADAS autonomous driving and all this stuff? Like none of that really matters. What matters to us is that the driver receives the notification and they slow down and move over. It's as simple as that. You're just breaking driver distraction. And that's what this whole thing is about. Nobody wants to hit a fire truck. Nobody wants to plow into a ladder truck sitting in a blocker on a side of an expressway on their way to work. Like nobody wants that to happen. But it happens because drivers are distracted. There's no other reason than they're distracted and they're not paying attention to the road.
Okay, so we've got 108,000 alerts happening in this 10-month pilot. That's a lot of alerts. Presumably, Chuck, that's not 108,000 different vehicles. That is how many? I mean, one alert. Imagine if you're going to a job in your fire engine. The alerts that would go, is that the amount of alerts going to all the cars on the way to that job? Is that what that represents? All those alerts? Is that a totality of all the different cars that had the alert? Or is it the alerts from the vehicle, from the fire engine to the cars?
Yeah, so
what the number means.
Yeah, it's our alerts to the drivers for the alerts that have gone out from the apparatus.
So how many actual fires or EMS incidents is it going to? I'm just trying to understand what the volume of incidents is versus the volume of alerts.
Got it. So what I have off the most recent incident totals about 1,500 from where that number came. Probably a little less at the time of the reporting. Right now it's about
1,500 incidents.
About 1,500 incidents with about 134,000 lifetime digital alerts. So at the time of that number keeps going up, but at the time of the pilot, so some ballpark around there. But when we're alerting in vehicles, especially to the navigation apps like Waze or Apple Maps, we don't know if that's seen more than one time. So as this technology is new, we keep getting more and more folks kind of opening up to want to share more and more information about how many drivers actually receive these notifications. So, the number on the alert side can be greatly also underreported because we don't know if more than one. Now, on the car manufacturer side, we're starting to get more and more clarity into how many individual unique vehicles receive that notification. But for the past, 5 years, we weren't even able to know how many people saw it more than one time.
Okay. All right. So that brings us nicely into data, doesn't it? So one of the things about what you're talking about is the amount of data that's produced, both by the fire department in terms of the number of staff going to the incident, the number of vehicles, what time it was, all of that data. Chuck, is there a plan within your pilot to map all of the fire department data with the Haas Alert data to work out what it's actually meant in terms of perhaps improving response times, improving the experience and the softer side, the impression on the staff, for example, just in terms of kind of understanding it in totality? What's your plan with dealing with all this data?
That's a very good question, Catherine. So, we love data. And so one thing we can look at is if there's a particular time and area where a lot of alerts are going off, like more than normal, now we know during that time and day or time and place, we can adjust our apparatus to respond maybe in a different route or something like that. So these are, just getting this information from Haas Alert and having our own information can help us maybe lower response times, definitely, decrease accidents and injuries. And so we're just really excited about that. I did want to just touch on what Cory had said earlier. So just alerting these vehicles we're as our drivers are very focused on where they're going. However, to stop a 50,000-pound piece of apparatus is extremely hard. I mean, you can't swerve, you can't stop on a dime. At least alerting these other vehicles that weigh 2,500 to 3,000 pounds, they have an easier chance to slow down and stop it or swerve or whatever. So I don't even know if there's a metric for that, but this just goes in different ways that this Haas Alert is extremely helpful and important to us.
And how interested is the mayor in the results of your pilot and looking to, obviously you've got the investment going forward, but in terms of seeing that and being able to understand what difference it's made to have this technology investment, how will that get reported upwards within your organization?
Oh, well, once we gather all the data and we put together our analysis and our projection, then that's how we usually will approach the mayor and city council, because now we have, we always say data doesn't lie, right? So now we have something that we can take and to continue this, this program and even other technology programs in the future.
This episode of the Emergency Services Times podcast is sponsored by MSA Safety, proudly supporting emergency services and first responders on the front line. At MSA Safety, protecting first responders isn't just what we do, it's who we are. We work closely with fire and rescue services across the UK to develop and deliver safety solutions designed to meet your ever-evolving needs. That includes MSA Bristol Firefighter PPE, trusted by services across the UK and beyond, shaped through years of collaboration with frontline teams. It also includes our growing investment in innovation and technology, from the connected M1 SCBA modular solution to our agile, fully managed service model that helps keep crews protected and ready to respond. But for us, safety goes beyond equipment. We believe in standing shoulder to shoulder with the people who dedicate their lives to protecting others, whether it's supporting firefighter charities, backing mental health initiatives, or showing up for community events. MSA is proud to be part of the emergency services family. To learn more about our work in the UK and how we're supporting first responders every step of the way, visit www.msasafety.com. With MSA Safety, when you go in, we go in with you.
In the UK, response times is an important indicator of performance.
Yeah.
And I presume that's the same for you, Chuck. You're measured and judged on your response times. And would you set out in a strategic plan, what they would be, what your sort of targets are? Is it the same in Detroit as it would be here in the UK?
Yeah, so our target right now for response time, we're already meeting that target. However, I mean, of course, if we can decrease it even more, would be amazing. And I like the fact that what Columbus did, the decrease happened organically. It was just, now you're approaching an intersection, and instead of trying to navigate around cars, now maybe these cars have all pulled over to the side where you don't have to spend that extra 15 or 20 seconds trying to navigate. So I'm really excited to see what the data will show us. And we'll probably start seeing something where we could start putting things together probably within the next, I would say, 6 to 8 months.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, I look forward to seeing that. In terms of thinking about the US more widely, going beyond Michigan, the state of Michigan, I wonder if you've had conversations with other metro fire chiefs like yourself or with other fire departments about what it is you're experiencing, whether people are coming to you because they're curious to see what you're up to, what that kind of conversation looks like, because you said you want to be a national leader in emergency response, fleet modernisation, and employee safety. So how do you go about that with your peers?
Wow, you have some great questions, Catherine. So actually, this coming Wednesday, I have a roundtable with all our local fire chiefs that connect with Detroit. We do this twice a year. And so these are times when we'll talk about, the new advancements that we have in Detroit. And with Detroit, because we're the largest fire department in Michigan, a lot of smaller cities, they watch what we do. And, they want to mirror what we do. So it's just exciting to be in this position where we could play like the big brother to the rest of these fire departments to let them know how these new programs and how we're infusing technology into our apparatus.
And out of state as well? What about beyond your borders?
So, we work closely with Canada, Windsor, actually. And that chief will be here as well. So We're talking internationally now, but in regards to among the states, we haven't reached out past Michigan yet, but we will. We will shortly.
Fantastic. And Cory, what interest are you getting from others now? There's kind of seeing you have the press from the Detroit Fire Department from itself recently. As a result of that, what kind of conversations are you having with people who are now interested in speaking with you about taking this on themselves?
Yeah, I mean, we're in 4,000 agencies today, but the key thing that was really different about Detroit that I think makes it a example, nationally, is not only the priority, but the speed and also the alignment that the department and the city had with city council, and everybody was on the same page. So a lot of times when you hear about, especially to small companies or, oh, it's difficult to work with city agencies. Oh, it's difficult to work with public safety. Oh, it's difficult to work with automotive. I don't find it to be true if you're all under the same, you all agree on what you're trying to do and you bring all the right people to the table.
What you map out there is very familiar in terms of the bureaucracy, the public services, the way they work together, the politics of the policy people, the people at the front line. Mm-hmm. It's an issue that transcends your boundaries. We have them in the UK, and it's interesting you talk about when you focus on the problem. When you're aligned on what the problem is and that you all want to solve the problem, then that is the sweet spot that you've just described with Detroit. So that's wonderful to hear and to hear.
Yeah, if someone says I don't want to solve this problem, it's like, okay, talk to you later, chief. Fair enough.
It's about the origins, isn't it? It's like sometimes people want to own the problem. It's my problem, get territorial. So it's getting beyond those territories, I think, as well, in terms of making sure that everybody's there for the right reason. So now we are coming to time because we have been talking for a little while. And so as we wrap up this great conversation, we've learned a lot, it's been fascinating. I'd just like to ask you both whether you could offer some advice. So the people listening to this in the UK and hopefully in the US, and to tell them what it is you'd like them to go away and think about, because we've covered an awful lot of territory there. So what is the one piece of advice that you would offer our listeners today to go away and start thinking about public safety, firefighter safety, and around how solutions like Haas could help them? So what's the one piece of advice? Can I start with you, Chuck, first? What would your one piece of advice be?
Sure. So I would say, because it sounds like that there's a problem with communication between, say, the fire department and maybe city council or the mayor in certain cities. I would say just reach out to them and create a relationship, create a line of communication with them. And that's what we have. That's what made this process so easy and seamless, because we already had spoken with them each individually about this program. So that would be my advice, because that really opens the door for everything else. Once you have that line of communication with your mayor and your city council or whoever, whatever body you have, it makes it much easier to get anything passed or anything voted on the way you want it to go. So that would be my piece of advice.
Great, thank you. And Cory, what would your short piece of advice be?
Just not to overcomplicate. I mean, we're live with Skoda, Volkswagen, Jeep, Dodge, Ram, Fiat Chrysler vehicles, Waze, Apple. Like you could get our device today, attach it to your fire apparatus, and then turn on your emergency lights, and in an hour start getting collision prevention. It's as simple as that. This is not a big drawn out process. It's not a complicated safety solution. It's quick, it's fast, it's easy. It was meant to do that. And so, yeah, I think just keeping it simple and not overcomplicating the solution to the problem that you're trying to solve would be my advice.
Great, thank you. So that's really helpful. So we've got one about relationships and bringing people together and reaching out and having those conversations, and also about don't overcomplicate things. So great piece of advice. Thank you so much both for talking to me today.
Great.
You're 5 hours behind me, so this is very strange for me talking to people in the US. And it's such a pleasure to see you, Chuck, again after 11 years after my visit, and to hear such positivity at the fire department. When I went there, it was in a very, very different place, and it's amazing to see how much things have changed, and with you in charge as well. So it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks so much, Catherine.
Great.
And come up in. We're waiting for the next time for you to come to Detroit as well. We'll be here.
Fantastic. So that's the Detroit Fire Department, working with Haas Alert to transform public safety and showing us that investments like this can have benefits that go way beyond expectations. My thanks to Commissioner Chuck Sims and Haas CEO Cory Hohs for talking to me. Look out next week for more sessions from the Emergency Services Show and the Emergency Tech Show. All our podcast episodes are sponsored by MSA Safety, and we're so grateful to them for their support. Thanks also to Tom St. John for expertly producing this episode. Be sure to share, like, and if you haven't already, subscribe to For Every Response, the podcast from Emergency Services Times.